All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Chris Downey, and on behalf of Brivia Consulting, please let me welcome you to the next webinar in our series, Lead Them or Lose Them, the Great Opportunity in the Great Resignation. We're excited to have you all here. I said good morning, but it's actually good afternoon for some of you. Might even be good evening for others as well. We are excited that you're here to join us again. And in fact, I encourage you, let's load up the chat. Let people know where you're joining us from today. And if you are in the chat, feel free to share, not just with the panelists, with all participants. We're here for 45 minutes today. I'll introduce Steve in just a moment. But for those of you that have participated in our webinars before, you know Steve really enjoys making these as interactive as possible. So let's use that chat. Ask as many questions as you'd like. We're going to try and get through as many questions as we can throughout our session together. And if we can't get to them all, we'll certainly try to capture all of the themes. So do feel free to interact throughout the session. Also know that the session, as always, will be recorded. We'll make sure that recording becomes available to you or to anybody else that you feel could benefit from it. In fact, I'll circle back with you all at the end of the webinar to let you know how we can get the recording to you and to touch base with you as well. Yeah, so with that, I'd like to introduce you to Steve de Groot. So Steve is a human behavior enthusiast. That's what he calls himself. I'm actually going to go out to call him a human behavior expert. I have learned more about human behavior from Steve than I have from any other person in the world, absolutely. And it has had a massive impact both on my professional life and my personal life as well. Steve loves to help, and he has demonstrated that through his work as a therapist, as an associate professor, and now as part of the Getting to Better initiative, and of course now as our president of Brivia Consulting. Steve's also an author of Sage publication, a book called Responsive Leadership, which is used in universities all over the world. And we're just fortunate to have Steve with us today. So I'll hand it over to Steve, and again, I'll come back at the end of this session to let you know how we can stay in touch. So Steve.
All right. Thank you very much, Chris. It's so good to be here. Thanks for everybody for joining us on this Friday. Normally our webinars are on Thursdays, so it was a little bit messed up. But welcome to, and thanks for being here. But also thank you for your commitment to getting to better. And I am excited, as I always am, to be with people who care about the same thing, who want the same things, who want to lead, who want to be better team members, who want to be just better overall. And we're talking about the Great Resignation. We're continuing the dialogue about this thing called the Great Resignation because everybody's talking about it, right? So one of the things I want to, as Chris said, not only welcome everybody, but use the chat. I want to make this as interactive as possible, even though it's in a webinar. I like to watch the chat. Everyone's talking about this thing, the Great Resignation. We had a webinar on it last time, and we're going to talk about what it is and why, what's driving it, but more importantly, what can we do about it? Today's presentation is going to be a series of threes. Okay, so ready for this? There's going to be what three things have led to the Great Resignation, three types of resignation, and why this Great Resignation is actually not the greatest one. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I also want to share three things that all humans need to be engaged and perform optimally. And here we go. We're going to bring it back home, bring it right down to something specific, which is three specific messages and strategies for leaders to lead their people and not lose them, to do the best, their absolute best at work and even in every other aspect of their life. So let's get to this, okay? We've got 45 minutes together. I'm going to keep an eye on the clock. Chris is going to keep an eye. Fill the chat. Make sure you use your question and answer function because we are going to take 10 minutes at the end of the webinar to get to your questions. And it's one of my favorite parts. Challenge me, challenge the information, talk to each other. Let's get going. So let's talk about this Great Resignation. What is the Great Resignation really, and what's driving it? And it's a term, the Great Resignation is a term that's been used to describe this mass exodus from not the workforce, but from people's work, right? People are leaving their places of employment and they're leaving jobs by the millions. Many leaders and organizations that we talk to are very worried about this for many different reasons, and we're going to get into a couple of them. As we said in the last webinar, it's okay to be worried because this Great Resignation is real and the impacts are vast and they're huge, and they're going to affect all of us. So our work, what's really cool is our work is demonstrating that there's a lot of hope, okay? That's what I want to bring today, because a lot of people are feeling overwhelmed. We're not sure what to do, what's really happening, but there's a lot of hope here. And actually, we have way more control over this great resignation than we think. And we're seeing that leaders, the ones that we're working with, can be instrumental in turning this around, which is such good news. The reality is the Great Resignation. So let's talk a little bit about some realities. I want to drop some realities today. Is that the realities are the Great Resignation isn't new. Employees, all of us here, have wanted things to be better at work for a long time, even just a little bit, right? You know what I'm talking about. You've seen it. You felt it. Hopefully you're not feeling it now, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. As our research that we've been doing and our conversations, over the last several months, we've been asking people two very specific questions. And as a matter of fact, if you were in our last webinar, we asked you these two questions as well. These questions are the ones that have formed a survey that we've been doing. The first question, and I'm going to talk about the results as well. The first question was, have you ever been in a job at a time in your career where you felt less engaged or less motivated than you could have been, right? That was the very first question. 100% of hundreds of people said, yes, absolutely, I was unmotivated, right? I felt less committed. Now, it's not that that's where they resigned to be, but they actually were less than they could have been. The second question was, could you identify at that time at least one or two things that would have made your work a little bit better, even just a little bit? And what's phenomenal about hundreds of people, 97% of people say, actually, yeah, I knew that there was at least one or two things that could have been done differently in my work environment. And this is what starts to become phenomenal about this dilemma that we have. We call these things the if-onlys, right? You've got them. Like, think back to those times you weren't motivated. You're just thinking about, if only they said thanks more often, right? The things that we're hearing are the meetings just to be more relevant to my function. My supervisor to check in on me more often, or maybe not so much, right? Maybe if people would just focus on my strengths or the things that I'm doing well versus just telling me when I'm screwing up, right? These are the things, by the thousands, we've heard these if-onlys. And as a matter of fact, you have your own if-onlys, right? One or two in your current workplace. So those if-onlys are tied to what matters. They're the aspects of our work, right, that we find the most meaningful. As a matter of fact, I'll demonstrate how those if-onlys are not only tied to what's meaningful, but higher levels of motivation, higher levels of performance, and even better mental health. Now this is what we're kind of not just stumbling on. We've made it our mission at Brivia that actually work can be a place where you can feel better and do better. I know a lot of people don't believe that. So these things don't seem like a lot, right? When you think about some of those, what if, like, if only you focus on my strengths, if only my performance, right? What's wild is, one thing is, well, if it doesn't seem like a lot, why don't people just say something? Why don't they just share and talk about it? So this is where I want to take a pause, right? And get real and be honest. If you know me, I love to be real. I love to be honest. And so do the people at Brivia. Is that I want you to go to your experience. So I'm going to be asking you some questions that I want you to put in the chat, okay? I want to go away from generalizations, because all these articles I'm reading, they're great, they're helpful, but people this, people that. What about you? Let's get to your experience in order to make this relevant and make some important points. It starts with back in 2005, I was working on an engagement project. I was interviewing a lot of people, and many of them were unhappy at work. When I reviewed the information and did the report, it was astounding. There were three common messages that we were hearing that people were consistently remarking on their managers and their organization. So I want you to get involved here, okay? So there were three messages in the report of the engagement survey and the engagement study that we did, where there were three messages, okay? Here they come. I want you to see if you can fill in the blank. Don't do it just now, but the messages were stated like, my manager or my organization. So they would say, they don't, right, was one message. They don't was another message. And they don't was another message. So before you put it in the chat, or maybe you're going to put it in the chat, right? All right, so throw it in the chat. What are the words that you think fill in those blanks? Let's see if you can get them close. So we've got care, we got listen, understand, share information, value me, understand, value me, they don't care, trust me, appreciate, listen, respect. Okay, all right. So you've actually nailed it, right? And you can see there's different versions. I see a couple of versions in there if you don't care. Wow, I love it. Hey, that's your experience. So get this, ready, in order. This is the themes. They don't listen was number 1. They don't understand or get it was number 2. And number 3 was they don't care. Right? This is a serious element. What's wild to me is the Oxford Dictionary says there are 173,000 words in the English dictionary. Okay, if you look at the chat, you guessed all 3, and most people guessed them in the right order. How common is this, right? So we have to expose another part of the dilemma. And I want you to participate. I want you to be honest. Okay, let's go to your experience. Imagine I'm your manager. Imagine that I am your manager at your work, and you truly believe that I don't listen. Okay, you truly believe that I don't understand. Now these are your experiences, because we'll get to what the real message was. So here comes my question. If you really believe I don't care, ready, in the chat, here we go. Imagine I'm your manager and I call you up. Okay, I call up Todd, I call up Leanne, I call up Linda, I call up Catherine and Trina, and I say, how are you doing? How would you answer me, folks? Let's see the chat. What kind of answers would you put in the chat? I'm okay, I'm fine, I'm great, I'm good, I'm fine, okay, all right, okay. That's the first question. Right? Connie said, not a great day. That's great. Connie's still struggling. Connie's like, maybe this time Steve will listen. Right? Shia says, I'm good, thanks. Jocelyn says, good, well. Here comes the second question. You ready for the second question? Do you have any questions for me? Do you have any questions, Simone? Do you have any questions, Jocelyn? No, nope, I'm good, I'm fine. Okay, so this is a massive dilemma. Kimberly, no. Because the reality is, you're not fine. The reality is you're not okay. You're not well. The reality is you have lots of questions, like first one, WTF, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm just saying, right? You have lots of questions. This is the thing about humans, right? What makes it so unfortunate is when we really believe this, we start to hide the truth. We start to feel when we don't want to get disappointed. We don't want to get hurt. So I'm just going to close my chat here so I can get to the slides, because this is where we get to the resignation. You ready for this? This is when the resignation starts. This is the real resignation, right? What's the definition of resign? To give up. To accept something is inevitable. To submit, right? So this giving up started a long time ago, right? Resignation doesn't happen on a whim, right? It starts much earlier. It happens in stages, right? And this is the important point to make from our research at Brivia. The signs, if we're looking, were there, right? When we believe people don't care, we resign. Full stop. The first type of resignation, though, here's the Great Resignation. It starts here, when we submit our voice, when we stay quiet, when we withdraw and we stop talking. That's the first level. The second type of resignation is we submit our willingness. We submit our effort. Can I help out? Yeah, maybe, probably actually. But this is when performance dips. This is when we're not performing like we can or like we used to. That's important, like we used to. Something changed. And of course, the third type of resignation is when we physically submit our written resignation and we leave. This is the one that we talk about. This is the resignation that we believe at Brivia could have been avoided. Now, some people are going to say, well, you can't avoid all resignations. Well, that's true for very tiny amounts, but the majority, we believe you can. So as we've discussed, many people have resigned. But here's the other thing. Many have resigned without formally resigning. Right? Our intent to leave is pervasive, and it happens for a long time. 50 to 60% of Americans and Canadians have said in a survey that they would leave if they could. So we have large numbers that have resigned without formally resigning, and many of them I have often referred to as the working wounded. This is a problem for many reasons, because turnover is costing money and burnout is costing lives. Now, I said there's hope. So if you're starting to get depressed, I want to remind you, there's going to be tons of hope. Okay, you ready for this? The hope is going to come in. Because where is the hope? Are you ready for the hope? Here's a big dash of hope. The number of people left behind eclipses the number of people who have left. Yeah, we're talking about the millions of left. Microsoft said 10 million here, 4 million here, but guess what? There are millions that are still there. The great opportunity, that's what it is, for leaders to lead right now, lead their people, not lose them, because leaders are instrumental in turning all three types of resignation around. But there's a paradox here. We can't really leave a place unless we first arrive, right? In order to help our employees get to better performance, better meetings, better participation, we must arrive at an accurate understanding of what do they need, what's important to them, right? Remember the if-onlys, right? As we've established, though, many of our employees aren't sharing their experience. So here comes the hope. Going to usher in tons of hope. So leaders must create, this is the big task of us right now, leaders must create conditions where people will share their experiences, right? This honestly, it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart when I hear people say, you know, I just need a little bit more from my company, my leader. I want more, and there's just slightly. And then when they ask, what do you need? Nothing. I'm good. I'm fine. I'm okay. And we suffer in silence. But here's the great news is leaders really do want to know. For many reasons, they just stopped asking, right? We're going to get to that. We talked about that last time. So our research, my research and the research at Brivia, and the work from the core algorithm is confirming that there are three conditions that all humans need to do their absolute best in life and at work. And now, here comes the good news. Now, if you come to some of our trainings and you're in some of our workshops, you may have heard of these three things that I'm going to talk about, but I'm going to add a component from the core algorithm that demonstrates why they have so much potency. So this is what we know humans need. These things are called the three great states. For humans to feel good enough to speak honestly and openly, for humans to feel motivated and engaged, to take risks, to give it their best, to show up, they need to feel what we call safe, significant, and situated. Now, safe, significant, situated, the three great states are conditions, and the good news, I'll reinforce this, is that we can control them within our relationships and we can influence them within the environment. Right? So think about this. I'm going to explain them. Safety, safe. Now we hear about psychological safety. It's important, but the three great states is way more in-depth and way more robust than psychological safety. Safety is about feeling physically, emotionally, mentally safe. That when you're with us, when you're with me, when you're in our team, you feel safe, you feel comfortable, you feel like you can trust. Significant takes it a little bit further. Significant is about feeling valued. Significant is about having worth. Significant is about, you know, I'm worth it, but if I'm not worth it, my work is worth it. My contributions are worth it. I feel valuable. But significant is also about feeling a strong sense of connectedness, a strong sense of belonging to one or more aspects of our work, to the people, to the function, to the task, to the environment, right? What's situated? Well, situated is about being clear. I know what my role is. I know what my tasks are. I have some clear direction. It's about my purpose. Maybe not even the big P purpose, but I know what I'm doing next. I know what tasks are important. I know what's expected of me, right? Clear roles, clear expectations, clear direction. So what we learned about the three great states is that when we're feeling these in our relationship with our manager and in our team environment, we are feeling and doing absolutely amazing. Think about where you feel great. Right? Think about where you feel great, but the opposite is true. When one or more of these is compromised, even just a little bit, is when we start to hold back. Right? One of my favorite examples, Chris shared with me one time, Chris Downey, who's just been such an amazing team member, you know, said, have you ever been in a place where you haven't felt wanted, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, once or twice. You know, and just think about that with the three great states, right? Like, so it's significant. I'm not really feeling valued. I'm not sure I'm wanted here, right? So right off the bat, that gets compromised. Well, what happens after this is we don't feel comfortable. Our safety is the next thing to start to get jeopardized somewhat. We're not feeling comfortable. We're not feeling confident. We're not feeling really good about being there. And what do we want to do? Let's go to situated. We want to leave to somewhere else. We want to go somewhere else. We want to move somewhere else. We want to hold back. So what's amazing about the three great states is that when we're feeling them and experiencing, we're doing really well. But when we're not, now let's take it to the work situation. Think about yourself. When have you been in a meeting where you have an opinion, right? Now, think about, before we go to the meeting or the team environment, think back to the chat, the question I asked you. If I was your manager, right? You lied to me. Right? You lied to me. You said you were well. You said you were okay, right? You said you had no questions. But what's interesting is one of the three great states. Let's go back to this. Maybe you didn't feel comfortable with Steve, right? He's not listening to me. He doesn't care. I don't feel I can't trust him. Maybe it was significant. Maybe Steve, you don't feel that Steve is valuing what you're about to say. Maybe you feel that when you're about to say this, Steve is going to criticize or judge, or there's going to be repercussions. Significant will be compromised. Situated. Maybe you're like, I don't know, why is he asking this? What's going to happen? Is this going to HR? And what's going to happen when I share my opinion with him? See, so the three great states are in play all the time. And this is great news for leaders because we can influence them and we can control them within our relationships. This was a game changer for me as a leader, because then I started to think about how am I conducting myself in a way that creates the three great states for individuals on my team, right? What makes the three great states so profound and makes them so amazing is our research on what I call the core algorithm. I can't wait to release this in the new year, is that humans also need something else. We call them core essentials. What makes the three great states so profound is that they are connected to what we call connection, clarity, and control. Control, though, is not a bad thing. Control is about feeling comfortable and having confidence, right? Those are core essentials. The great thing about as leaders, when we create the three great states, we're not only doing what's important, like this is kind of okay, it's something, a technique that I used, it actually is feeding the brain. It's feeding the heart, it's feeding the soul. And that's what makes it so profound. And that's why when people are feeling the three great states, they not only tell you how they're feeling, they give us feedback. They show up, they come early, they stay late. Because see, the three great states are not only critical for getting people to share their experiences with us, they're critical for everything else that we want. Preferred performance, cooperation, connection, communication, and community. And at the end of the day, results is just a natural byproduct. So what's so important is that people will not share their experiences with us until they feel the three great states. So why is that important? Why do we want them to share our experience? Let's go to those if-onlys. Remember those small if-onlys? Now it becomes a tongue-in-cheek because I say, well, those if-onlys were really small, but remember I said those if-onlys are connected to what's meaningful? Well, why is that important? Well, we call those what-ifs, if-onlys, powerful forces of meaning. Right? Very powerful, that when we understand what they are as leaders, when people share, when Sarah shares, when Todd shares, when Chris shares, when Stacy shares, when all the people that showed up, Jody and John and Jocelyn, right? When you guys share, when Connie says, Steve, this is what I need from you. This is what I hope for. This is what's important to me. I now have the ability to respond. I now have the ability for all of the people on my team to take what I've learned about them and create a meaningful experience and put them into situations to leverage what I know about them to create meaningful work experiences. Right? And this is what's wild to me. When we hold back these things, I said earlier, if I was your manager, I really can't leave a place unless I arrive at an understanding of these things on the left and on the right to create that meaningful experience. Now, this is also, I really want to say that this is where I start feeling bad for leaders, because we haven't met a leader that doesn't care, right? Now, some people are probably sitting there going, well, I know lots of leaders, they do things, their behavior is this and that. And what's really important is we do this exercise called the greatest leadership, the page 1. And we get them to talk in silent, nobody around, to talk about what they want. And most leaders want really good things. So this is where we separate leader from leadership. Leaders are people, right? They get up in the morning. I have not met one leader that says, I want to make my team's life heck and just terrible today. I want to stress people out, right? I've never met one. But their behavior, their leadership, which is a practice, really need some work, right? So we can preserve their integrity as a person. And this is good news for leaders as well, because we already want good things. So remember those if onlys. The reason why we need to know them is because if we don't access them, we say whatever, the longer it goes, the stronger it grows, right? The longer the wait, the heavier the weight. And people start to resign. The first Great Resignation, which is not so great at all, is they resign their voice. They stop talking. And that's when things start going sideways. So that's a lot. We're going to open it up to questions right away. But before we get there, before we get to the questions, let's get into tying all of this together, because that was a lot. But let's simplify it. Let's focus on 3 simple messages that will tie everything that we've talked about together and help you lead, not lose your people, those that you're responsible for, okay? So let's get to this. Oh, before we get to this, how about one more profound point? Those if onlys that are right there below the surface. Everybody that was on the chat just now and said, nothing, I'm fine, there's nothing, I have no questions. Just below the surface is a piece of meaning that I need as a manager to help get them motivated. But not only help get them motivated, this is what our research is showing. That those if onlys, those potent pieces of information are tied not only to motivation and meaning, but they're tied to your engagement, tied to your performance, and above all, they're tied to your resilience. And that's what makes what I'm about to share so profound. I'm not sure if you hear the sirens. It's not that profound. They've actually found me. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to put this on the screen for you. What I'm about to share, I share with some of the greatest leaders I've ever worked with. Some of them you read about, some of them you might even know. But these are the 3 strategies that I share with them. And when they're acted upon, 100% of the time they make things better. So there's 3 messages. Some of you have heard me say these messages. This is how we can curb all 3 types of resignation. The first message that you as a leader can give to your people, one-on-one or as a team, is I want you to be as successful as possible. Imagine that. Now, I know some people are like, oh yeah, like talk and action. We're going to talk about that. But imagine somebody said that to you. Next message. So there's 3 messages. I value you, and I want to learn about what you need, what's most important to you. I want to know about what you're hoping for here when you show up, when you come here, between the time that you get here and when you leave. And the third message is I value our working relationship. And I would like to work with you and make it as strong as possible. I don't want you to think about times that you've heard people say things like this and didn't follow through. I want you to just connect with these messages. Because this is what makes these messages, they're important, but what's more important are the actions and the interactions that are essential. Once employees believe that these 3 key messages, that you believe that Steve actually does care, you believe that Steve does listen, that he does want to hear you, that he does care about you, then you show up in a way that was at one point totally unimaginable, right? What makes these 3 messages so profound and so impactful, and that's it, it doesn't have to be that complicated, is they create the 3 great states, and most importantly, they give humans what they need, those core essentials. They give them connection, value, relationships, right? Belonging. They give them clarity on them, on you, on what's important, on why they're there, on what feedback they might have. And they provide a sense of confidence, a sense of trust, and a sense of control. So this is my guarantee, and I've seen it. If you believe these and you share this with the people that you want to elevate and you align your actions, right? And this is it. We have to ask ourselves every day, and we're human. That's it. We slip. There's days, 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, due to a tragedy, I was behaving in a way where I got back at the end of the day and I had to ask myself, hey, Steve, was your behavior in line with those 3 messages? And there was a couple of maybes, right? And I had to go, all right, I don't feel good about that. And I had to circle back and say, hey, you know something, Chris, you know something, John, you know something, Steve, um, I don't feel good about what happened. And that's not what I want for you, for your work, or for our relationship. And what's so amazing is people are forgiving. They're very forgiving. So let's talk about this. We're going to open it up to discussions right away, questions and comments, because I want to hear from you. It's time to move away from this thing we're calling the Great Resignation. Because the thing we're calling the Great Resignation isn't really the time the resignation starts. And there are people right now, as I said, the number of people that are thinking about leaving eclipses the number of people who have left. So we got to get to work. We've got to move to something that my good friend who you just met, we're going to pass it back to Chris right away to facilitate the questions and answers, is he's referring to what he's calling, it's time to focus on the great renegotiation, right? What are we renegotiating? Well, employees have been negotiating with themselves. What's most important to me for a long time. Now they're ready to negotiate with us, with leaders, and say, hey, I'm ready to just talk about what I need, what's important to me. I want to, I've been waiting, right? And we better negotiate with them so that they don't go to other companies and negotiate for a new job. And finally, this is what I'm referring to. I believe leaders have an opportunity here, and that's what this is about. Lead them or lose them, opportunity in the Great Resignation. But I think it's time to move into what I'm referring to as the Great Resuscitation. What's the Great Resuscitation? It's time to rejuvenate and elevate our experiences of people so that they can resign from resigning and move to that place where they experience greater meaning, motivation, and yeah, even better mental health at work. And we're seeing it. We are seeing it. We know, I'm going to open it up to questions, open it up to conversation. Before I say my last statement, I want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for your commitment to better. We know that you want the best for your people, right? Those that you serve. And I want to assure you that we at Brivia do too, and we are always here to help. So I wanted to thank you. I'm going to pass it to Chris, open it up to questions. No easy questions, please. I'm just kidding. Challenges, questions, comments. Let's open it up, and I will pass it over to Chris. Thank you very much.
Awesome, Steve. Thank you. Inspiring as always. There are quite a few questions here. But one that came in earlier, and I don't know if you caught it in the chat or not, but it has to do with the three great states, and I figure I'll throw it your way because it comes up often.
Okay.
Think about the three great states. How does that relate to Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
It relates directly to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? One of the things, though, the three great states are not only the connection, clarity, and control. Those core essentials are like various needs. We do have our basic needs. The interesting thing, and so yeah, absolutely. We have our needs. The great news about the three great states is they allow our needs to come forward, right? So in the chat, when I said, what do you guys need? How are you doing? You had lots of needs that you didn't reveal to me. By creating the three great states, I now understand your needs so that I can do something. I can't give you water if I don't know you're thirsty. I can't, let you start the meeting at 9:15 if I don't know you have to drop your kids off at daycare, right? So that's how they're kind of related. It creates the conditions where I can connect with your needs. Now, in addition to that, we are working with a group and the wonderful people from the Viktor Frankl Institute. And Maslow, in some of his writings just towards the end, was talking about values being a higher order need. So our need for connection and our need for relationship and some of the things we talk about is actually in some instances can supersede basic needs. So that's my answer for today. Thank you for your question.
I had to bring that one up, Steve, because I know it comes up often. A couple of some great questions here. Here's one for you. What are your thoughts on moving ahead when the three great states are your leadership values? So in middle management,
right?
But it may not be it might not be the same values at the higher level.
Yeah, that's a great question. We hear that all the time. We hear people say, like, I want to give my people something, but I can't because I'm not getting it myself. We have to be very careful. Those are two different things. If I'm not getting the three great states from my manager, it's still my responsibility, right? Ethically, morally, and actually legally to take care of my people. Now it's harder, but I've got to do what I can to create that containment to be able to give them the create the three great states. It's unfortunate, right? We work in some environments where that's happening, right? Where people are like, I don't feel safe, I don't feel significant. So we got to find that elsewhere until we can get that from our leader. But it's absolutely essential that we get it. It's a great question, but the tough answer is that we can't let that be an excuse for not providing the three great states for the people that we're responsible for. And I'm not saying anyone's using that as an excuse, because it's real. When we're tired and we need to take a freaking knee, we need to take a knee, right? But we still need to be there for the people that rely on us to create safety, to create the value, to create the direction that they need to do well. So thank you for the question.
Yeah, great. And Steve, you often say this, I think you mentioned with the three great states, that we can create those in relationship and we contribute to them in the environment. So I think that speaks to this.
Yeah.
We can create those three great states in that relationship and contribute on a higher level. Here's one I think that a lot of folks are struggling with right now. How do you offer the personal touch when you work remotely from your staff and there are so many people to manage? This person tries, as they say, they try really hard,
Yeah.
but they're open to additional ideas and feedback on
Yeah.
how to do
Oh,
that.
no kidding. This remote work has just pulled us all apart. But let's keep in mind, connection, being connected or being close doesn't mean connection. So there's really good news. For starters, do what you can to let people know you want to be connected, because some people don't want to be as connected as we do. And that's really awesome when I found that out, because like 40% is like, Steve, I'm good. I'm like, oh, thank goodness, because I was checking in 100% of the people. Another task is, if you've got lots of people to take care of, write down like their initials or look at a list and start from the people you haven't connected with the most, right? You can also send out an email. We've worked with people that have over 135 people that are dispersed, and we send out an email letting everybody know honestly that you would like to connect more. And what does that look like as we enter this new next, right? We don't use the word new normal, we use the word new next. We know it's going to be new, we know it's going to be next. What does connection look like for you and I going forward, given the reality of our circumstances? Okay. Don't hesitate. When in doubt, reach out, right? That's one of the things we can do as leaders, is just ask them, what does that look like? And how can I be the most helpful when it comes to connection?
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, there's so much here, Steve. So we're just going to keep plowing through them. We have
Let's go.
time
Let's
left
go. Let's
here.
go. Yeah.
All right, here's one that I know you've heard before. How do you motivate a senior employee that doesn't want anything to change?
Well, I don't think I've met a human that didn't want anything to change, for starters. So I'm just going to say we got to be careful about what's really happening for them, because 120 people just said to me they don't have any they're doing fine and they don't have any questions, right? So on the surface, it looks like they don't want anything. So let's keep that in mind. What humans show and what we really know are two different things. So it's one of the things I say is ask them, start with what they're excited about, like which aspects of the work do they like. If they state all 1,000 parts, awesome, then they don't have an issue. But there's probably one or two things that they're worried about or they're concerned about, right? And that's where I would start. I sometimes ask, I look like double Dutch. I look for the opening, right? And I look for opportunities when people are complaining about something. And then I kind of show up and say, hey, tell me a little bit about that. What do you think you need? What's most important to you, right? And this is what I've learned about humans. We sometimes show this veneer if we really believe nothing's going to change. So we just start saying nothing's going to change. And by the time someone shows up, like, Steve thinks nothing's going to change, but he really desperately wants something to. So look for those opportunities. Don't assume how they're behaving is what they truly want. Look for those opportunities to hear some frustration or some rub and jump in to help out and get to know what they need. Those are my my suggestions for today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. A couple more here, and then we'll wrap up. This is good. There's some hope in this one, but also some challenges here. In this case, our organization has a new CEO who embodies much of what you spoke of in the presentation. Our former CEO pushed our very small team to the brink of many of us considering resignation. Under our new CEO, we are in the Great Resurrection phase. They love this term, but we still have team members that are struggling.
Yeah.
Are there suggestions that you have to help those who are still impacted by our previous boss or former boss?
Yeah, for sure. I was talking to somebody yesterday, same kind of thing. They feel like they're not sure yet, right? So it's okay to be, let's call it not resistive, let's call it reluctant or apprehensive. And we've got to respect that people aren't ready yet. No matter how excited I am, I'm like, come on, come on. I can't. We've got to respect that they might be apprehensive. They may not believe it yet. So back to a couple of things is when you connect with them, ask them what they're hoping for, right? Or which aspects are they excited about? Even just no matter how small, because we start with those glimmers. And then as a team member, especially if you want to bring them along, don't hesitate to say, hey, what do you need from me? Right? And be honest about the things you can be honest about. Like I heard someone say yesterday, we came from hell. We came from hell, and we're now there's some hope, and I'm scared. That's what they said. And I'm like, it's okay. That fear is real. So we've got to respect it. We've got to support it. We've got to tune into what they need from us and how can we be helpful. And we got to move with them at their pace. What's really cool though, what I love about trust and belief is that once you see it, we make up for all that lost hesitancy and that apprehensive, and we blow past what we thought was possible. So be patient. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Just actually a comment I want to highlight here that Cameron put in for everyone to see, but I think it's worth reinforcing. There was just a comment, but in an environment where you need to give performance feedback, I imagine
Oh,
it'd be a lot easier if you've established the three great states.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. You know, a question that we ask a lot of people in every single industry, like at the restaurant, think of any place, are you comfortable before we begin?
Right.
So many performance reviews don't even ask that question, right? What do you need before we begin? Start with the strengths, focus on the strengths, right? Get them some water, let them use the bathroom, significant, tell them how valuable they are as a team member, like that, all the positive stuff situated, let them know why they're there, what's important to you. And yeah, definitely it will go much, much better in a performance. We do something called the core performance, and it's how do you structure a process and a structure around the three great states. So, and it goes well, very well. Actually, discipline goes well in those cases. Thank you very much. Great
Very,
comment, great
very
questions.
important. One last thing, Stephen, and this was open. Deborah put this into everyone, but I think this highlights that when there's often scenarios that are going outside of our control. We have been stuck in legislative compensation restraint for 3 years. With inflation, COVID, our folks are hurting financially, and no other remedy. You know, whether it's 4-day work week, paid commute, etc. We're just not providing relief that they need. So I guess putting this, I'm interpreting this question a little bit. There's all of these things going on outside of our
Yeah.
control.
Yeah.
What do we do?
Yeah. Yeah. So find control where you can. Now, when it comes to compensation and your livelihood, I want to respect that, right? We all have to, and that's one of the things is not everybody has the privilege to resign and go find something else. And I think it's critical to honor that. And so when things are out of our control, one of the best things we do is find connections and allies and people that will validate and affirm our experience without telling us to suck it up, buttercup, right? And surround ourselves to keep though asking the questions though, because we also have to advocate for ourselves and other people and to network within the organization. And sometimes just encouraging conversations about it more often can move it along. But also it's about these kinds of, one of these things that we talk about is that people that can't resign, we have to have honest conversations about compensation and market value and their worth as well, because those are real issues. But whenever you're, as a human being, we all get to the point where we go, is this something that I can tolerate or put up with? And how and what can I do to make it even just a little bit better? So those are the things that thank you for being here and thank you for that question.
Right, Steve. I'll take it back over in just 1 second, but I want to appreciate Derek, our friend, asked a question. He was the first out of the gate, so I think we should respond to this one.
Okay, all right.
Said, what percentage of quits do you think are quitting manager versus quitting company?
Honestly, if I was to pick a number based on our research, I'd say 82% is due to the experiences or lack of experiences with manager. And there's some in our meaning. We have an M3 called that measures meaning. We're seeing a high three things that impact our level of engagement. The leader is the number one, it's by far, and then our experience within the team becomes the second one, and then a whole bunch of other things after that. So it's a high number, which is why we at Brivia started to focus on leadership if we're going to move this needle and move this mountain. Thanks, Derek and Chris. Thank you, everybody. I want to say stay safe. We're still in the pandemic wherever you are. Thanks for joining us. Chris has some information for you, and we'll see you again soon. Be well. All the best on getting to better.
Steve, thank you. That was excellent as always. And apologies if we didn't get to all of the questions. There were so many today, but we really appreciate them. And just again, we will make the recording available to you. I will send it out to all of you. And I'll tell you this, Steve mentioned multiple times the importance of creating those three great states and creating meaningful experiences. That's all of the work that we do at Brivia. The products that we provide, the services that we deliver are all in the service of that, actually helping create meaning at work and helping establish those three great states at an individual level, at an organizational level. So reach out if you want to hear more about our core communication offering, our M3 survey, as Steve mentioned. That's actually a way that we can work with organizations to create those three great states and start to increase the level of meaning at work for everybody. So thank you for joining us. I will be in touch with the recording and when you can expect to hear from us next, because there's more coming your way. I will also share some information with you around our products and services to help you create more meaning at work and establish those three great states with your staff. Thank you, everyone. Be well.